I'm going to be showing you how to do this in DaVinci Resolve. It's free and very good for this. If you want to grab it, there's a link to the product page as well as a video walkthrough for the installation in the description of this video. This tutorial is a bit more advanced than a lot that I've been making recently, but even if you think this is above your skill level, give it a try anyway. It's a great thing to have in your editing tool belt. Part 1. Getting a good track. I'm assuming you already have footage you're trying to do this on, otherwise you'd probably not have found this video. So we're going to start by selecting our clip and heading into the Fusion page. We're going to be using a good number of nodes for this, but I'll make sure it's easy to follow along with. Some very important hotkeys you'll need to know for this are Shift Space, which will pull up your Select Tool menu, Shift Drag, which will allow you to put things directly into connections between nodes, Control Scroll, which will allow you to zoom in and out on the viewer as well as the node web, and to move around in either of those two areas, we'll just drag with our middle mouse button. Using Shift Space to pull up our Select Tool menu, we'll start by adding in a color corrector node. Then we'll add a tracker node. Now, hold Shift and drag that color corrector node between your media in and your media out. We're going to be using this color corrector node to enhance our tracking ability, but don't worry. Once we have our tracking data, we can get rid of this if we want to. So to make this easier on our tracker, we're going to up our contrast and do anything else we can to make our target more defined. So we'll mess with our brightness controls and maybe a few other things in order to make that happen, and once we're happy with what we're seeing, we can get started with the track. To do that, you'll want to select your tracker and drag this box, which will define your target, onto the pupil of the first eye you want to change. Now, we'll start dialing this in over in our inspector panel. We're going to stick with 1 frame per point because eyes can do little flicky movements that take less than a frame to complete, and it'll look pretty bad if we go to 2 frames per point. For adaptive mode, we'll choose best match because we don't want to lose the track if it goofs a little bit, and we can adjust this manually later to make it fit perfectly. I'm going to set 0.04 for my tolerance, but if you're getting a crappy track or if it's taking way too long because it's trying to be too precise, feel free to adjust this according to your needs. Last but not least, I'm going to go with track center append for our path center. For this kind of thing, our job will be easier the less motion we have in the track, but I decided to move around a bit for the sake of bringing you a more complete tutorial. We're going to want to do our best to have our target be the absolute center of our eye. The closer we get here, the easier our job will be later. So I'm going to look for the frame in the clip which has the eye most visible. Right here we can see the whole iris pupil combo, so finding the center shouldn't be too hard. Once we're happy with the centralness of our target, we can go ahead and start our track. I'm going to use the track backward from this frame button to track the beginning of the clip. If your tracker leaves your target, press this stop button and hit yes for this prompt. Go back until you hit the frame where it first came off, then take this little control point and move it back to where it should be. Then move a frame forward or backward, whichever way you're currently going, and do the same until you've caught it up to where it should be. Then grab the corner of your target and put it back where it's supposed to go. Even if it looks like it's already there, redefine your tracking target anyway. It will prevent headaches down the line. There's a lot of manual control necessary to make this effect work. The more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it, so try not to approach it lazily. Now we press track from this frame again, and we'll repeat this process every time it makes a mistake. The faster you catch it with the stop button, the less time you'll have to spend manually adjusting control points, so it will behoove you to be on top of that thing. Once you make it all the way through the track, we can get started on part 2, making our masks. With our track data locked down, it's time to make our masks. We're going to be using 2 different polygon masks for this, one for the pupil and one for the iris. I'm going to make the one for the iris first, so we'll grab a polygon mask and find that frame we started the track from so we can look at the whole eye again. Now I'll add points to create a polygon mask around the outside of the iris. Once you're happy with your mask, go ahead and right-click this center parameter and connect it to the center of our track. Then adjust your points so they line up correctly if you need to, and that mask is ready to start. For the pupil mask, select the first polygon mask down here in your node web, then go ahead and add in another polygon mask and set the blend mode to subtract. Back in our viewer, we can draw a mask around our pupil just like we did with our iris. Then set its center to the same tracker, and it'll probably shoot off somewhere random, so zoom out with Control Scroll and drag a box over all of the points and put it back where it goes. Since our blend mode is subtract, it'll cut a hole in our iris mask, which will leave our pupil untouched. That seems like a small detail, but it really helps sell the effect and make this look more realistic. Part 3. Colors. For our new eye color, we're going to be applying the masks we just made to a color corrector node, which you can find right here or search in your Find Tool menu. To have this affect our media in, we'll need to cut this connection between media in and media out and instead run it through our color corrector. So we'll connect media in to color corrector and color corrector to media out. Now we'll bring the output of our masks into the effect mask input of our color corrector, and we'll see nothing happen because we haven't changed any colors yet. So select your color corrector node and come up to this big color wheel, then drag that central master point to a new color and your eye will change. I would try to keep this subtle unless you really like the all color no detail look, but regardless of where you go with it later, right now you need to be able to see through it to the eye underneath, and it needs to be different enough from that eye for you to be able to distinguish between the two, because it's time for part 4, manual rotoscoping. Manual rotoscoping is not scary, it just takes time. For this part of the process, you're going to want to find some good music and settle in for a good roto session. If we rely entirely on our semi-automated tracking, we're going to have color that moves around when our eye doesn't, color that doesn't blink when our eye blinks, and color that doesn't look natural. So I'll show you how it's done for the first few frames, and then I'll speed it up so you don't have to sit through the full time. If there are any interesting frames throughout though, I'll pop back in to walk you through potential issues. And now that we're on our first frame, you can see that the eye is in a little bit of a different position and our track isn't perfect, so we need to do some manual adjustments. What we're going to do is grab groups of points and readjust them to the shape and size of the iris here. Once you've done this, you need to set a shape animation keyframe because as we change throughout the clip, we're going to want to save those changes where we make them. So we'll fix our mask right here, grab a group of points, bring them up, grab a group here, bring them on in. You're just going to want to make sure that most of that purple is covered. And we're going to give this mask as well as our pupil mask a soft edge of 0.001 just to bring a little bit of fade into that. And we're going to move the points for our pupil mask as well. So I'm actually just going to grab all of those and move that right there. And now if we deselect, we can move forward a frame with our right arrow key, and it tracks right to the eye. You'll see that it starts to come off a little bit. The purple starts to come out in the motion blur. So that's when we're going to come in, grab these points, and slide them out. And if you have a lot of frames between your changes, like not so much on this one, it probably shouldn't be noticeable, but if you went from here to here, and you had no real difficulty with your mask, you would need to make sure that you set a shape animation, say the frame before this one, so that it didn't just automatically animate between those two shapes over this entire time here. So we'll go back to before, and if we give a click down here, we can right arrow key. If we don't click in our node web before we hit right arrow key, instead of moving a frame forward, we're just going to be moving our mask around. And that's not ideal. Most of the time, it's really, really easy fixes. Like right here, we'll be able to fix this whole thing by just moving our center point like that. And it looks like we could cover up a little bit more purple up here, but it's nothing drastic. The eye is in motion. That's going to be really hard to detect, but we'll go ahead and go forward again. Looks like we need to move our center point again. So we'll just grab that, scooch it on over, move forward another frame. Bring one of these, or this whole group up just a touch. And we'll go forward another frame, and then again, just scoot it over a little bit. And if you find yourself having to scoot the same amount every time, again, just grab those points, mass move them, put them where you want them, and then keep going on through. And it tracks much better that way. So far, we have a pretty solid roto going on, working with our track. And then as we move forward, we'll see it start to come off again. And when you can see purple, just cover it up with green. That's all there is to it, really. Boom. And then you move forward. Got some purple out here. So we're going to make our mask a little bigger over here. So here we are, right before the blink. The blink happens there. And we're going to do some controls on the mask that we haven't done yet. So for our polygon 1, the one that controls the iris, we're going to need to change our levels as well as our shape. So what we're going to do is go forward 1 frame. We can still see a bit of the iris, so we're going to leave level alone. But in the next frame, I would imagine we aren't going to be able to see it. So I'm going to make a keyframe right here. And then I'm going to bring our points onto the iris like we've done every time. Just like this. And this one's going to be a pretty drastic change because we've got a pretty drastic change in what we can see. Just tighten these up, pull those in, grab these top ones as a group. Oop, as a group. As a group. And then go ahead and drag them down. Bring those back up. And again, you just want to make sure that you're covering your original eye color with your new eye color so that you can sell the effect and have it look good. And we've got some purple right here because that is where we're cutting a hole in our mask. So we're going to go ahead and grab this and just shift it out of the way for now. We have just a little bit of purple bleeding through still up here. Get rid of that. And in our next frame, our blink is not complete yet. So I'm going to go back and get rid of our level keyframe that we made before and make one here instead. And then we're going to do that same thing. We're going to grab our top, we're going to move it to the top of the iris, block out all that purple. We're going to bring these in, bring the bottom up. And the more time you spend making this perfect, the better your final result is going to look. Okay, so we managed, all right, that's interesting. That doesn't happen a lot. We managed to catch no full eye closure between frames. Normally, if that's going to close all the way, let's call this all the way shut, you'd want to set a keyframe on your level before that frame at 1, and then during the frame while it's shut completely, you go ahead and bring that level all the way down to 0, so it shows just the eyelid underneath. And then in the next frame, when it's open a little bit again, you bring that level all the way back up to 1. So it would look like that. 1 in the frame before, 0 during the blink, and then 1 in the frame where you can see the iris again. But since there was no blink captured here, that's going to be unnecessary. So we're going to reshape our mask now. Bring it back to the size and shape of the iris. We're going to follow the eyelid up as the blink goes through. So we'll do that, and then we will grab our pupil mask and drag that back onto our pupil right there. Then we'll click off, open it a little bit further, slap that bad boy right there, and then we'll adjust our iris mask according to the size and shape of the iris, if you can believe that. Just do that until it is done. And if you find that you're clicking next to your points, you can delete these points by just selecting one of them and pressing delete. That'll get rid of it. So if you end up with too many and you need to simplify your mask a little bit, just click one and hit delete. And in contrast to deleting points, you can also create new points by just clicking, and then you have a new point there. Drag that up, get this back to shape. And again, this is not the most exciting process in the world, but the effects that you can make with rotoscoping are awesome. So it's worth spending the time to make this good. Grab our pupil, put it back on our pupil. A little bit better, maybe. Like that. Yeah. So then we have our blink. Oop, oop, oop. See, this is what I was talking about earlier when I said if you have a lot of keyframes between, that you want to make sure that you make a keyframe before you change it drastically. So we are going to go to our first keyframe that's a horribly different shape, go back a frame, set a keyframe here, and then fix this mask up and get it to be the right shape. You can see that everything is horribly out of position because we told it to slowly animate to that blinked shape instead of staying this size until the blink, which is what we do by setting this keyframe right here. And now, once this is done, grab our pupil and put that where it goes as well. Okay, so now if we go back, it's correct. And if we go forward, we capture that blink. And that looks kind of janky in here. Like I could tighten up the top right there where it's touching the eyelid. But if we zoom out here and just watch this full speed, see it's tracked right there on the eye, do the blink, nothing weird there. So we'll zoom back in right after that blink and keep going. I'm going to come back for the next blink as well, but I'm going to kind of rush through that one. And I'm going to speed this up so that you don't have to sit through this whole thing. So we got to our second blink, and it looks like this time it actually does close all the way, so I'll be able to show you that keyframing technique a little bit more accurately. So we'll go forward and bring these down, follow that eyelid, and then right here you can see just a little bit of iris left, so we're going to make our keyframe right here. Go one forward where it's closed, bring level down to 0, another one, and now you can see that iris right there, so we'll bring our level back up to 100%. So we'll back up, and then we'll just finish following that. We'll get rid of that. Get rid of this. Down here, down here. Bring the bottom up. Just, you know, follow your eyelid. All right, so we'll get that blink. We'll zoom out and check that out. The blink looks good. As soon as that blink ends, we're going to need to bring that back up to the full size. So we'll find the blink, zoom back in, and I'll speed this back up. Part 5, eye number 2. For the second eye, you're going to do the exact same process, but since this is a YouTube video, I'll be punished by the algorithm if I show it to you again. So if you need a refresher, just pop back to part 1 and follow the steps again, but on the other side. Once you've done that, if you're ready for more VFX, I'd recommend this video about why a green screen might not be the best choice for keying your footage. I'll see you over there.